This is really a training weekend. It's not about taking you into the bush and running through the bush with a knife in your mouth trying to survive. We'll just be teaching you all the fundamentals of bushcraft and survival, that you can take that as a platform of knowledge to then do with it what you will. Expand on it, find an area of interest and maybe expand on that. Yeah, I will make the way up through here. Let's see what we see before it gets too dark. Here we are, day 2, morning 1. Came out here knowing it was going to be a wet weekend, and the first 72 hours we knew was going to be some pretty heavy rainfall. We had a tarp up. Structurally it seemed fairly strong, but something we didn't account for it was a Bunnings tarp. So the eyelets have pulled out of the corner, just about lost every eyelet. So everything collapsed, all our dry wood pile, yeah, pretty well got soaked. So we've pretty well taken everything back to ground zero, which is a great learning experience. Quality of the tarp for one, but also taking your lumps of wood that are probably wet on the outside, but being able to split them, get into the dry wood on the inside, and then eventually shave it down so that you've got kindling to start the fire again, start that process. So it's the best learning environment in a wetting condition to get a fire going in a wet environment. So here we are, the guys working tirelessly to keep everything dry, putting in drainage systems around here to get the water out of the area. Put towards you, and you've got no risk of that blade potentially shaving off off through here. Yeah, like that. If it slips and catches you, but keeping it flat, then you can end up with this extra fine stuff, which will probably take a flint from a fire. If you want to get us some more of those, that'd be awesome. And then that way, even though you're pulling the knife towards you, you're not pulling the blade towards you, which is probably more of a safety issue. But yeah, here we go, I'm doing awesome.
Yeah, it was a blustery wet night. It was fun. Got a fair bit of sleep, but it was good. Tent stayed dry, so I was happy. Woke up to a collapsed tarp, no fire, so that means no coffee, and yeah, now we're getting it all back up and running again. So.
Rod. You get some people that just go flat out shaving it up and down, which is not always that effective. When you do that, you stand a chance of knocking your fire over, and then you've got to put your knife down and put it away and build it back up again. A bit of flame, but it's still struggling to hold the flame. So we can get a couple of other people over here ready to give it a verdict. Lovely. Okay, this is where we've got to really try and stay on top of it, guys. And remember, the fire wants to climb, so we don't smother it with flat stuff. We try to keep it vertical. Even some ferns to keep a little bit of air gap between it. Right, you want to keep working on that, guys. You're going to need the oxygen around every little piece, so that if you lay a big flat piece on it, although it might be perfectly dry, you're going to smother it of oxygen, so you need to allow it to do that climbing. You need somebody here ready to blow if that goes close to going out. Now, all those shavings on the other side, let's bring some of that back in there before it gets too wet. It's the burn time of a cotton wool with a little bit of Vaseline in it. Gives you a lot of time to get some other paper and stuff onto it, as you can see. I'll sit that one down there. And just see how long that just continues to burn for. And it gives you that, because as you notice, when myself and Anthony, we'd get a flame, it'd go for probably 1/4 of a second to a second, and if you didn't get it to climb something by then, it was gone out. If you've got that sort of thing to play with, it's a real lifesaver. So regardless of how good you are with your fire lighting skills, let common sense prevail and have yourself a container of cotton wool balls, stuff like that. It just gives you so much more start time, if you like. Yeah.
Coffee!
Coffee means porridge, means whatever. But you can see how morale would really lift if you're wet and cold and miserable and you've got a fire going. It's just ties in really well with your headspace. If your headspace is going down and you get a fire, the fire brings your headspace back up and you feel more confident. Apart from being an achievement thing. Yeah, you know, cotton wool ball's still going now. That's probably what, minute and a half now. But keep monitoring this. What tends to happen, especially after the ground has been wet, we put down that paper bark underneath it, which prevents it from going straight through to that damp ground. But very shortly, that paper bark underneath is going to burn through. The wet ground underneath is going to start evaporating, and that steam is going to start coming up through your fire lay, and then your fire will start to go out, and you're going, what's going on? And it's only because the moisture underneath the earth is coming up as it heats up, and it's going to potentially threaten your fire again, so you really got to stay with it until you've basically got logs that are shooting holes. You've got a certain amount of time to get out of there, guys. Once, go around twice, go around the third time, and then feed it back through those two. And just a really good one. It's strong, won't come undone. It's used in a lot of anchoring systems in rope pack systems. Like that. Myself enough to make a puff, which might sound impossible to climb up a rope. It's actually not, using certain knots. That prusik that we set up there, that first knot up on the main ridge line, that's a prusik, yeah. And if you've got two of them and you can load one of them up, stand up on that, take the weight off the chest one, slide that up as far as you can, put your weight back on that so your weight's on the chest one, then you can lift your leg one up, push up on that, and you can just make your way. A lot of cavers would use it coming up out of maybe a sinkhole in the ground. They use that technique for getting back up the rope. If you went broadly and asked what are the sort of 5 most functional knots, you would get most people agree on a couple of them, and then each person has their own sort of sweet spot for or own preference for certain other types of knots. Don't always feel just because I teach you a technique that's a duck nuts and that's the one you should do. Be prepared to go home, Google it, try a different way of doing it, and think, no, I actually find that easier to do it that way. Yeah. But what you're trying to do is cover the uses of what a knot would be used for. So, who here would say they have a reasonable knowledge of knots? Yep, you done rope access work? Yeah. So your certain knots that you would have used would have been for setting up anchor systems and things like that. Yeah. And Anthony, you've done through bushcrafting, you would have had
basic knots, securing tarps and such.
As you say, maybe three main knots that you use. Yeah.
No more. Let's keep it super simple.
Yep.
The only ones I really remember is like the bowline, slip knot, and maybe a figure 8.
Yep. Yeah. But as we roll through the weekend and you're sitting around, you probably heard me say before, instead of necessarily just sitting, getting warm and things like that, just be doing something with your hands, keep your mind busy, and that's more rolling into the survival aspect of not just sitting around feeling sorry for yourself, but if you can be doing something functional. So if we start off with one that we may have all come across, and some of you probably know it and you tie it regularly, would be a bowline. Or in the States or in the Northern Hemisphere, you refer to it as bowl, how do you say it? Of a bowling nut. I tend to hold this end with a little bit of a tail like that, like I'm holding a cigarette, yeah, like that. And then what I do with these fingers here, I've still got the functionality of the end of my fingertips to reach over and grab this other piece of rope that I'm going to tie it to, right? So I reach over with my fingernails uppermost, and I just take a hold of it, and then I turn that as if I'm turning the key of an ignition, right? And now I have a what is known as a loop in the rope. This would be a bite of rope. When it's like that, when it doesn't cross over itself, that's a bite of rope. Once I cross over that, that becomes a loop in the rope, yeah? That's probably where this comes into it. This loop that I've created there is now the rabbit burrow, right? This is now the rabbit, right? Now if I have my finger on this piece here, you can see that as being the tree that he's going to run around. So the rabbit, he comes up out of the hole because he's in the ground. He comes up out of the hole. He then runs around that tree and he goes back down the same hole. Now keeping it parallel, you can see how this runs up, goes around the tree, comes back down, and it's currently sitting parallel with the other line. Right, now just take up the two of those now. Yeah, and pull on, let that one take up, and there's your bow line. Okay. Yep. And you've got nice lens tail there. Many different ways of doing it. We can practice this one later, but not necessarily so much now. If I had this rope going around my body and I wanted to tie a bow line like here, I could do the same thing where I create the little hole, rabbit goes around a tree, or I can simply do that. And I've created the hole and the rabbit's already come out of the hole, just simply by doing that. Yeah. And then I just need to pass that around, grab it by my finger and pull it down, and I've tied a bow line. So, and that's one technique. There's probably another 5 or 6 ways of tying a bow line. Some of them I look at them and I see it's confusing, but for other people they go, oh no, I find that so much easier. And they're right, it is for them. Yeah. Really only your fingers that go over, they come up through the centre, and then it's much easier then just to manipulate that around, take the tail and pull it back through without your hand getting caught. Yeah. So the trailer, I'm going to say the load of the trailer is where I am and where I'll eventually secure it off with the trucky's hitches on this side of me. Yeah. So I've thrown that over the top. I've gone around this railing here. As I come back over to the top, I'm going to cross over that other rope. Right, just watching this way to start with. Right, and as that comes back around and makes its way back up to the top, it's going to come in and go parallel to the first run of the rope. So it's going to go underneath there. You've got a cross there. It's going to go underneath that there, running parallel to the other one. And then what we do is we dress that knot, what we refer to as dressing it, by pulling them all in together, having as many pieces of rope touching each other, and it's the friction factor that causes this one to lock itself off. So as I pull on that now, that's quite secure. I could then do a little stopper knot just by doing a little granny knot or half hitch, and just taking that down onto there to make it even more secure. But I can put an immense amount of force on that and it's not going to give away on you, yeah? That idea of setting it and dressing it at the direction of the pull is pretty important. Not right around the other side of the rail, because you're going to have an element of slippage on it if you do. Exactly the same knot, but there's another way you can do it, which some people find easier when you've got an open end that it can go over, right? So what I do in that situation is I do 2 movements and they're identical to each other. Roughly the same for the second one, but that one now goes in underneath that one, slips over the top, pulls tight, and that's a clove hitch. Same deal though, you dress it off, make it snug, do your thumb knot on it just to secure the tail, have it facing the direction of pull that you're going to add the tension to it. Does that make sense to anyone? Anyone done that one before? Closed loop with your double fisherman's on there. Slip your way over and drape that over. Go through once, twice, and if you wanted to try 3, you could. And then as it pulls together, you've got to get it so that these 2 that you're dressing off here are coming from the centre. For purposes, everyone tends to have a bit of a utility one that they might have on them for that whittling, for the shaving, for getting for getting kindling and things going. And then as you move up in size, it needs to be a bit more robust, a bit bigger. So this is a Barco, a little bit similar to the moire knife that Leon's got. Yeah. So a little bit similar in shape and size. They come so that when you turn the knife upside down, you should never be using a blade to get sparks, right? You've got to respect that edge. You're going to need it for something else far more important than getting a fire going. If you can buy a knife, and make sure when you do that you've got that nice 90-degree spine there so you can get sparks. This one was made more as a throwing knife, made by the same guy, a guy called Ross Jones in WA. I served with him in the army, in the regiment, and when he got out he got into a bit of knife making, so this is one of his knives. Fairly chunky. You can certainly, and you can see by the thickness of the spine there, you could get a good batoning piece of wood, put that over a lump of timber and flog that as hard as you like. You're not going to break it. Going up a little bit bigger in size again. This one was from a mate of mine, Stevie Ellis, who got me this one. I did have one given to me years ago when I was on a tour over in Malaysia with the military. Australian sent troops over to Malaysia to defend their Air Force bases back in the probably from the early 70s through to the late 80s, and we got to work with the Gurkhas, which are I suppose a branch off the British Army. They were trained up, they're Nepalese soldiers trained up by the British Army, and this is their knife that they carry around on their belt for all of them. Typically only used for two things, you know, chopping down trees or cutting throats. You know, it's a pretty savage sort of knife. They had a bit of a tradition that each time they drew the knife, it was to draw blood before it would go back into their pouch. So you'd often see little nicks on their hands and stuff like that as they would draw blood before it went back into the pouch. Bit of a tradition, yeah. But solid as you look at the spine on that, it's probably a 8 or 9 millimeter. You can roll through to keep your head in the right sort of space, yeah. So the letter S represents size up the situation. So if the circumstances were, if I was to give you a scenario that you went walking with a 2 or 3 people that you quite like, walking along some bush track in some national park that's pretty rugged, you hadn't been there before, wasn't really a super defined track, and so you say, hey guys, just going to duck into the bush, need to go to the toilet. You go, yeah, no worries, we'll wait here. So you take your backpack off, you grab a bit of toilet paper, you wander into the bush, I don't know, maybe 50, 100 metres away from the track. You know, you wipe your backside, stand up, pull your pants up and do your belt up, and then you go to walk back and you're just that little bit disorientated because everything around you looks much the same, and you've got that little bit of doubt in your mind as to which way you actually came in. Your ego starts to take the better of you. You start to sort of feel, well, I don't want to call out to them because it sounds, I feel like I'm, you know, I don't want to let them think I'm lost, because I'm not lost, I just can't quite find the way back to where the group was. I think it's over this way, and it could be a bit of an overcast day, so you haven't got much shadow, you didn't take much notice of, even if there was a bit of sunlight, you didn't really have a look at what direction your shadow was when you walked in to be gauging which way to walk back. So you're in that bit of a situation where I'm a little bit too ego proud to call out and say, hey guys, where are you? So you decide you're going to head this particular direction because you feel that what feel right. So you walk for about 100 metres and you think, oh, the truck should be here soon, I should probably hear them talking soon. You get 100 metres or so, there's no sign of them. Then it starts to sink in a little bit more, your mouth starts to get a bit dry, palms get a bit sweaty, and you're thinking, I need to call out to them. So then you let out, hey guys, where are you? A bit louder, yell out again, and a couple of 100 metres through the bush you're sort of thinking, well no, I can't hear them. So you're starting to call out even louder, you can't find them, and now you're thinking, okay, they're probably wondering where I am, they're probably calling out, so you start calling out to them. They don't hear you, you don't hear them. This is where this starts to come into it. So size up the situation. The fact that you've just walked into the bush, you didn't take a water bottle with you, you didn't have a day pack with you, you're really going to have to say, okay, well, what do I have on me? Do I have anything in my pockets? Do I have anything that's going to be of benefit to me? Chances are you've probably got stuff all. So you'd want to be calling out even louder, or you'd want to probably stay where you are and allow them to raise the alarm to say, look, that's been 15 minutes. He hasn't come back. Something is probably wrong. They're probably going to go out in a little bit of an extended line, walk into the bush a bit, come up with some sort of plan of trying to find you. But if you continually walk, hoping to find them, you could be walking completely the wrong direction, and that's when things get pretty serious. Yeah. The letter U would be utilise your skills. We talked before about, you know, the different backgrounds of people that might have. If your background was a builder, or if you grew up and you were pretty good in Boy Scouts and you're pretty good with your knots, you've got certain skills that you can rely on that will allow you to feel more confident in what you do. It's no good trying to do something you feel completely inadequate with, because it's probably going to come back and bite you, as you're going to feel more negative when it doesn't work.
Yeah, Maxie! Good to see you, Max. How you doing? Really good, thanks.
I don't know if you've crossed paths with any of these guys before at all. First time in most of them, I reckon. Yeah, it's going to be right. I'm going to try a little bit of golden syrup on it. Hard to call this surviving, is it? Didn't have this back in my day.
This is
Oh,
luxury.
look at that. How good is that? Where else would you want to be?
We've seen a couple of stars.
Did we
Bloody-
pass?
Bloody good.
Well done.
Well, guys done well. Definitely a bit of golden syrup. Maxi, I reckon that's the go, mate. Wakey, wakey. Time to get up. The commander's coming. Commander Tungahan is on his way. Hey, wakey, wakey. Time to get up. Commander Tungahan's on his way. 5 minutes. Wakey, wakey. Hands off Snakey. Let's go.
Morning, Maxie.
Go. Sense of urgency. Get your gear on.
Morning.
This is a bit of a change to the camp, yeah? Bring it in there, mate. Anthony, bring it in. You notice there's been a bit of a change to the camp. Our tarp has been taken. That's not a good thing. Last time that happened, it meant that the commander was coming, Commander Tungahan. Because when the commander comes, he's probably going to want to test some of your skills. But what we're going to do is going to get some breakfast into us, get yourself well hydrated, and get ready for a fairly busy day. Excellent. Okay, so grab your cups. If you've got a knife and you've got your saw and those sort of things, have them with you at all times. You're going to need them today. And today will be a little bit more about a sense of urgency. Yeah. Solanum family. This is just one of those 80 plus plants in that family. This one, however, as delicious as it looks, is not edible. Making a tarp, probably thinks we're getting a little soft and we need to maybe toughen up a bit. How commander works sometimes. We get him on a good day, he's a good man. But he can be a little bit, what's the word, like temperamental. Something I'd encourage everybody to do whenever you get a rope is what's referred to as flaking the rope out, because ropes can get themselves different like slight twists in them, and one of the ways they will get twists, in my opinion, when you do this, you tend to put little twists in the rope, and then when you eventually take the coil out and lay it down, you can often, when you're trying to unravel it, you end up with these sort of little things here, which don't always shake out straight away, and that's probably as a result of that light twist you're putting in it. So when you go to Bunnings, you'll see all the different ranges of ropes there, and you'll see some nice brightly coloured stuff there, and you'll go, holy shit, that's 30 metres of rope for $5.95. That's a bargain. It's a bargain because it's what they call BSR. You know, anyone know what BSR stands for?
I do.
Shit rope?
Bunnings ship rope. Yeah, Bunnings ship rope. It's not the only store that sells it. You can go to Anaconda and see these beautiful coloured ropes for $5.95 for maybe 30 metres or something. It really is crap rope. And if you're thinking about setting up a swing for a child, and the child might be 20, 30 kilos, yeah, you're literally putting their life at risk. It's a very, very weak rope. Perishes really, really quickly. This is much better quality. It's still from Bunnings, but you pay a bit more for it. And if you were to cut the end of this rope and have a look at the filament inside, completely different. It's definitely synthetic, and it's better. So as I say, it's referred to as butterflying used by climbing circles. It's not particularly difficult, but the idea is you're not putting light twists in your rope. So as I can start off this way, or I can start off with it just across my hand. If I've got a particularly long rope and it's going to be a bit weighty, I'd prefer to do it over my shoulder to support the weight. So if I start off at this point here, I have the midway point of the rope slightly longer than what every other loop will be after that. So if I take this here, I reach up here, it goes over my head, down to the other side. I reach across and grab that one, up over my head, down to the other side. As you'll notice, the rope doesn't actually create any loop here. That's completely free, yeah, through the centre. See what I'm saying? So it's just keeping open in the centre. It's exactly the same. It's only a short length of rope, so my coils are a little bit shallower, a little bit shorter. And when I get to about this point here, I can then start doing wraps around it. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Get to about this point here. I'm going to take a bite of the rope through. I don't pull this all the way through. I just get it to that point there, and then I reach over the top, place that over there, and then that's nice and tidy. Now if I wanted to, if it's a bigger length of rope like this one here, I can keep this as basically a shoulder harness. I can tuck that in behind my back and either tie it off there, or if it's long enough, bring it around to the front and tie it off there. Then I've got my hands free to walk through the bush with it.
Know how to work a sundial, Maxi? No, let's find out together.
We'll talk a little bit about the acronym of plan when you're back over near your notebooks, but the letters P-L-A-N. Just briefly, P refers to protection. So in a situation where you've been caught in an environment that's unfamiliar to you and you're in that out of your comfort zone, if you think of the letter P referring to protection, that is protection from anything that could potentially harm you. Could be protection from the weather, could be protection from wild dogs, could be protection from insects, could be protection from what else? Give us a couple more. What else would you want to maybe protect yourself from?
The sun.
Sun, yeah. Getting sunburnt, get yourself out. That means it could be as simple as getting under a shady tree, but protection, yeah. Cool. L is referring to location, so that would be as soon as you can get your orientation of which way is north, so that you can then sort of go, okay, if that's north, that's west, east, south. Get your bearings about you, so that you can start zooming out from where you are in your mind and starting having a concept of which way you drove. Going on to A is acquisitions. So acquisition is about acquisition of anything you might need. If you haven't got water, find water. If you need firewood, find firewood. Yeah. And the last one being N, being navigation. You've made that decision that you are going to try and find a road or find a homestead, get yourself out of it, come up with a bit of a navigation plan. Anyone know what latitude we would be on here? When we talk about latitude, you know, when we talk about latitude and longitude, so a little bit like a basketball, you see the lines on a basketball, that would be the lines of longitude from top to bottom. Latitude are parallel and they run around in rings, yeah? And each time they come from the equator south or from the equator north, they different degrees. Hemisphere or northern hemisphere? Southern hemisphere. Okay, so we know the equator's north of us, so we're south of the equator. How far south?
25 or 30 degrees, something like that.
You're not far off. Getting closer to that, we say it's in between 25 and 30. What do you reckon we are here?
26, 27.
Yeah, 26. The spring and autumn equinox is the only time the sun actually rises due east. For this time of year, the sun's rising in the northeast, setting in the northwest. During our summer months, it's rising back here in the southwest, taking a path all the way over the top, not quite above my head because I'm still south of the Tropic of Capricorn. It's making its way high in the sky and it's going to take this angle right back down to the southwest. So it's making an arc all the way through here. So it's a big, long day in summer, yeah? So, yeah, as I say, this is only going to be extremely accurate at the spring and autumn equinox. But from here we can see that we're creating a line from the first shadow, the second shadow, and as the day increases, it's going to make itself a bit of a slight arc through there. But if I was to lay that stick down there in that sort of angle there, and if I was to place my left foot on the side of the first shadow that we created, and my right foot on the second shadow, that has to be basically north through here. The guy called Chris Sheldrick, an English guy, he organises like different events. It might be like a great big music festival, or it could be a wedding where he's got to get people to come to a location. He needs someone to do lighting, he needs someone to do music and all that sort of stuff. And he was finding it confusing in the UK by giving somebody an address and they'll go, oh, Churchill Street. I went to the Churchill Street up on the other side of Sussex. So I thought, and so names of places can often be confusing. So can latitude and longitude. If I was to give you an accurate latitude and longitude here, we indicated that we were roughly 26 degrees latitude and we're roughly 153 degrees longitude for Caloundra. That's well and good, but if you wanted to be more accurate, you're going to be looking at about 16 numbers. So if you were to send 16 numbers to somebody, they muck up one of them or get a couple of digits around the wrong way, and that could have them 500 kilometres to the west of where they're meant to be just by getting one number wrong. Now if I was to go onto what three words here, hit the button, and then put the little arrow, which is going to indicate where I am. I am currently standing in classifies, combating, earnest. Those three words are nowhere else on the earth except the three squares I'm standing in now. I'm now standing in flaunting, finest. So you can imagine if I had been bitten by a snake and the ruling on snake bite, should I walk back over to my vehicle and then drive myself out of here with a snake bite?
Probably not.
No, the rule is stay where you are, get a bandage on, and have help come to you. I said, if I said to John now, can you give me a description on the phone? I'm talking to the ambulance. Yeah, you've been bitten by a snake. What do you mean? Where am I, John? Where are we?
Yeah.
Roughly. Yep, exactly. Yeah, but if I
But
said
that
to
even
them,
happens in the city, in an urban environment as
Yeah.
well, where I've actually found this app super useful.
you're travelling up a country road, come around a corner, and you end up seeing a car on its roof and people are screaming and blood everywhere. To make it even easier, if you have an app called Emergency Plus, open that up, give it a couple of seconds, and it comes up with the three words on Emergency Plus at the bottom, and it also gives you the option of hitting 000, state emergency service or police, and it gives you the location at the bottom, including latitude, longitude of where you are. But it gives you the what three words on. That's an app.
Free?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
it free?
a free app. A lot of wattles contain saponin, but this plant known as Alphatonia excelsa, common from sort of northern New South Wales all the way up through subtropical area across the top end down to probably north of the Kimberleys. You'll find this one growing. Pretty easy to recognise for a couple of reasons. On the underside it's somewhat silvery, but on the other side it's green. Now you'll notice that the new leaves at the top are quite lime in colour. They're the only ones that will contain saponin. Once you get these older leaves, the saponin is probably drained out of them or it's transpired out of the plant itself. And I'm going to rip these up just to show I haven't got soap or anything in my hands, just using the leaves. The water to it. Hopefully water is a luxury that you have. And put it in the palm of my hand and just make a small circles. We end up with this frothy substance that makes like a good soap. So if you're walking through the Aussie bush and you've got cuts and scratches and things and you don't want them to get infected, you cover those and it helps it keep sterile. It's got a mild antiseptic value to it. Just smells like, which is probably your next question, what's it smell like? It smells like cut grass really, I reckon. Pass it around if you like. But if you want to give that a crack, if we're walking around and you find some Alphatonia, grab a bit of it. The key really is to get it, if you see some people doing this, it won't really, there you go. So it's a really cool plant to know. Now when you're looking at wattles, I mentioned wattles contain saponin. If you see a wattle after it flowers, it'll have these little green seed pods. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Most of them will contain sharpen, and not all wattles, but a lot of the wattles will contain the sharpen. Same deal, crush up those new green seed pods of a wattle, add water to it, and she'll lather up. There's something I haven't been through with Commander, and I'm apologetic. It's I don't want to blame the weather, but I haven't really gone through any self-defense with him.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on that, especially hearing some of the troubles that's going on around the area. The last thing I need is to have yous end up in my camp all busted and broken. So facing each other here, and we're just moving around, getting ourselves warm, and you're aiming for that shoulder, you're aiming for that, or you're aiming for that knee. All right, if you get tagged, do a push-up, straight back up, find your partner, keep moving again. Yeah, if I can touch your stomach, that's where I'm coming through. If I can touch your knee, then I'm just that much closer to grabbing you and taking you down to the ground. But just think about like you're swatting away mosquitoes to begin with. Yeah, as he goes for that shoulder, there you go to tag the shoulder, up here. Well, just swatting it out. That's all I want to see. I just want to see how you guys react and respond, and what sort of timing you guys have got there going on. Watch out. 10 seconds with this partner, finish up. Make your little feints for the setups, yeah? Hold the knee, shoot for the head, okay? I bailed from my group. It was night time, we're in an area I didn't know. I was just going to the ATM. Yeah, almost had my head squished in by the brick. And then 4 other lads came out to help him. So it's just one of those things where you just got to not take the risk of, I'm just going down the street, boys, you be right, you stay here. I'm all good, I'll go get my money out and I'll come back up. People don't think, like, we're here because there's obviously a maturity and a real wanting to be better. What else have we got?
We've got to V. Value life. Yeah. Value living, value life.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about I?
Improvise, overcome, adapt.
Yeah. There's the other V.
Vanquish fear.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens when we get in fearful situations?
Make stupid choices.
What vanquish? What's the idea around vanquish? What's vanquish the fear?
Conquer it.
Conquer it?
Overcome it.
Overcome? Yeah, I like overcome there. Yeah, because it's just as simple as the kid being scared of the deep water. Yeah? It's not the deep water he's scared of, it's the past trauma and now the way that he's playing it out in his mind. Yeah, like anyone's scared of thunder and lightning, it's the way they're playing it out in their mind. So that overcome, it's really just the story you're telling yourself. Yeah, we could sleep here on the dirt and we'd be alright, but a lot of people would be terrified of that concept for nothing, just because of the story that's in there. So
Cross, or you want to let him know what knots you know?
Bowline, cross hitch, double fisherman's, and what were the other ones called?
Crossing the sheet.
Crossing, there you go.
Sheet bend.
yeah, lovely.
Footline hitch.
Double fisherman's knot.
Yep. I suppose in the history of fire, and you don't know quite how far to take it back to. You think, oh, you take it back to the earliest techniques of being able to create fire, and then you take it back to obviously Stone Age man, and who was the first one to actually make fire. And then you think, but before that they used to be able to manage fire. They might not have been able to create it, but they could manage it after a lightning strike and a fire going through the landscape. They would have come across animals that had been caught up in the fire, and then it's like, hey, it's a fresh animal that's just been burnt by the fire, and then they tried the meat, and not only did it taste better, it was easier to digest and everything like that. But the idea of creating fire would have been probably one of the biggest breakthroughs for mankind, being able to actually make fire when they needed it. So pretty interesting. We're losing light in the afternoon, and once you get late afternoon, the light's intensity is not as strong. But if you want to play around with the lens here, with some of the different materials, we've got all different sorts of tinder here. This is one from Central Australia, a type of grass called woollybutt grass. Pretty cool material when you look at it. It's super fine and fibrous-y, and we don't have a lot of intensity in the light there at the moment, but getting that to smoke up is not too difficult. But getting it to hold an ember is a little trickier. But there's probably 4 or 5 different techniques of fire that was used around Australia. You know of the traditional hand drill method, and that was used in parts of the tropics and things. Down in South Australia is one of the areas where they used flint napping, getting the sparks off rocks. It wasn't really used in other areas, but around South Australia it was used more. Areas of the Pilbara they used the plough method. You would have seen on Tom Hanks's movie Castaway, where he was doing that plough method, driving the timber up and down a trough, if you like. That was used over that way. Bow and spindle, not so much used in Australia, but probably more by Native Americans, by using hide and cordage and things like that. It's a bit of both. So a couple of bits of char cloth here. So this would have started as just a piece of white t-shirt, and what I've done there is put it into like a nugget tin, like this. Put a couple of small holes in the top to allow the gases to escape, but not enough to allow oxygen to come in and burn it. So it's missing out on one of those 3 things of the fire triangle. It's got the heat, because once you put it into the tin here and you've got a fire going, you can create your own char cloth by throwing the tin in there. You'll see the gases escape as it gets hot, and you see flames at the top, but the flame doesn't actually get inside, so it doesn't fully burn the material inside. It takes it to a black char, but it doesn't actually ignite. So when you go and put a spark to it afterwards, it's a really good glow that you can get from it. So I say that was a white t-shirt that I threw in there. The reason you use white is because when you take the lid off after it's been burnt, you can tell that it's definitely gone to a black char. If you put a black t-shirt in there, you wouldn't quite know whether or not you've So what we've done there is I've just put 1 spark on that ember there, on that black char cloth, and you can see how it's glowing. Pretty good little way of getting a piece of ember there, to introduce that to a bird nest and create yourself a fire. Really easy to carry some of that bush. Now you can build it up from that instead of necessarily just having the char cloth, which will take a really good spark first time, every time type thing, and keep on glowing for ages. Still glowing now. But this is the flower stem of the well, I'll call it balga because that's the WA Noongar term for it. But the grass tree, yeah, you might just want to cut chunks out of this and split it, put it into a tin can, throw it into a fireplace, and then you end up with what's very similar to a charcoal. So if I put a spark to that, got one on there, might have a little one, have I? Yeah, it's a great technique. Product that I reckon you could probably stick in the glove box of your car or in your backpack. It's got so many purposes. This can be used for sterilising your water to make it drinkable. It can be used for making a slightly stronger solution of a bath as an antiseptic if you've got cuts and scratches or tinea or anything like that. You could probably even in a diluted solution use it as a throat gargle if you needed to. But it's a product called potassium permanganate. And as you can see, it's really bright red crystals, and yeah, it's not a bad way for lighting fire. Some techniques slightly easier than others. In this case, I'm thinking of something that you would almost definitely have if this was in the glove box of your car and you popped your bonnet and you went to your brake and clutch reservoir. Most of the time you're using DOT 4 brake fluid. that amount of crystal there is probably enough to sterilise maybe 10,000 litres of water. It goes a long way. If I was to pick up what I consider to be like the smallest granule, that's way too much there, that'd be enough there to sterilise a jerry can of water type thing. Yeah. So 1 or 2 small crystals into a litre of water just to give it the lightest pinky colour would be enough to sterilise it. Wait half an hour and then you can drink it. So what we're going to do here is just put a couple of drops of brake fluid. Doesn't happen straight away. It's not going to burst up into flames or anything like that. And sometimes it doesn't work. But you can either use brake fluid, you can use glycerine, you can get sugar that you might be making a cup of coffee with, and mix it with this 50-50 sort of thing. Add a bit of friction to it with a knife blade or the back of a spoon, and you can get it to burst into flames. So I'll put a couple of drops in. I really do think it can be that the brake fluid can be somewhat aged and can possibly go a little stale, but sometimes this can take up to a minute, yeah, before you get that chemical reaction take place. So if anyone's making a little bit of a rough gauge of time, we'll sort of see what happens.
I got the timer here on the camera.
Yeah, cool.
Another thing you can use is powdered chlorine and brake fluid.
Yeah, that can be pretty intense, can't it?
Yeah.
Is that one dangerous?
It's bloody dangerous.
Yeah, right, yeah, yeah.
Does it?
And only 1 tablet chlorine, break it up, a couple of drops of...
There we go, so we've got a bit of smoke there now.
Yeah.
Then that'll often fade away for a little bit.
Same thing, it kind of it goes and then...
Yeah, and so this will go probably into a flame here in a second. Go there. 3, 2, yeah, there we go. It's effective as Lundarby, eh? Yeah. So, as I say, the benefits of having something like that in the glove box of your car for not just starting water, but sterilising water. You know, it's not just starting fire, but for sterilising water and all sorts of stuff. Add a battery to this, and then you end up with a good burning ember that you can add to a bird nest. It's quite an intense light. It's not so much critical what species of plant that you have, but if I was to push my thumbnail into it, if I can just do enough to make a slight indent, I'm not talking about pushing halfway into the wood by any means, but just enough that I can make a slight indent with my fingernail, then that's about what I'm after, a slight indent. As far as the spindle itself, that's also happens to be a piece of hibiscus. In fact, all 3 are hibiscus. This is hibiscus, so is that, and so is this. You can use a grass tree flower stem. You can use batwing coral tree, currajong. You can use lantana. I'll probably use 10 or 15 different types of plants. So it's not so much exactly what species, but certainly more about the consistency of the wood. Try and create yourself a little bit of a tripod with your balance point to make yourself make it a little easier. Now, the first thing I try and do is just basically bed this one in the sense that this piece of wood has not been used on this before. So ideally I want to just give it a few light turns back and forwards just to groove it into its position. If you try and go hell bent for leather straight away, what's going to happen is it's just going to jump out and you're not going to get that build up of sawdust in the bottom. I've got a little bit of kangaroo dung in there at the moment, but what I want to do is just bed it in, go back and forwards. You're not trying to get smoke or anything straight away. You might end up getting smoke, but you're not after that straight away. You're trying to get that fine sawdust just to build up at the bottom, and as it builds its way up that groove, these grooves that you can see here, as it builds its way back up and it gets nearly to the top, then it's like, okay, now add a little bit more downward pressure. Go back and forwards a few times. When you see a trickle of smoke coming from your punk pile, then that's pretty well what you're after. That's what you want to then, you know, put the effort into getting. So I'll just bed this one in and we'll see how we go. This top chock is typically a hardwood. It's just a piece of gum tree, I think it was, that I've grooved a hole out in. And to get the top of this to spin in there, you want it to be like a bearing block where you don't get friction in the top. We want the friction at the bottom, but not at the top. The best way to do that is to get this and put it in your ear and get a little bit of earwax. Sounds silly, but probably the best form of, I suppose, lubrication to stop that getting hot. So you'll see that I've got my arm wrapped around my leg there. I want to keep this as steady as I can, straight up and down, without causing much more movement than I need it. Now that's the hard work done. You don't have to rush it at this stage. All you want to do is just move your sawdust, kangaroo dung in there. Let that coal grow. Then we introduce it to our bird nest. There, close your bird nest in on the top of it, and then turn it upside down. And then you've got to transfer. Sometimes that might continue to smoulder. Let it smoulder because it's a good backup. Turn your head away, get fresh air. Yeah. What do you reckon? Can you give that a go? Wraps around there. You'll notice what I do with having it as a rigid stick. In order to maintain the tension I want, I just have a couple of fingers under there and add a bit of pressure to it if I need to. But if you have a green stick, often the flexibility in the green stick will hold that string nice and firm for you. Yeah, but it's obviously this part must be up. You'll notice that the spindle's on the outside of the cord, which gives you a greater length of distance that you can use the full length of the rod. If it's on the inside, you're a little bit more restricted for room. Yeah, that's probably not a bad length to work with. Anything shorter, then you're having to go faster and shorter. Too long becomes too cumbersome, so that's not too bad a length to work with. Should be flat.
Yeah.
Yep. Tip your bow down a little bit to bring that's it. More finger pressure on your string if you feel that it's...
Yeah, I'm kind of tending to push down as I'm pulling on the string, so
yeah, right.
Counteracting that.
And feel for a bit of a difference in the feel of it, as well as the sound will change. When it gets to a certain temperature, you'll feel that it's doing what it's meant to do. You'll start to you'll hear the difference, and you'll see the colour of the punk change.
Yeah, there's heaps of punk coming out.
It's starting to get dark. Yep. So as that punk gets really dark and you think you're getting close to an ember, ever so gently pull your hand back towards your shin, which will allow the punk to go, or the hot ember to go into the pile. Full length of your bow, you're only using about 6 inches at the moment. Keep leaning in back slightly. And a little more speed. Spindle back towards you just a tad. Okay, just got an ember, mate. Keep it going nice, long draws. Another good 5 or 6. A little bit more finger pressure on the cordage. Lean the spindle back a little bit, so you're pushing the ember out to the groove. You're about 95% there of getting an ember. A bit more speed, a tad more speed. Okay, I reckon you've got an ember there now. Steady, slow up. Lift your spindle out carefully. Lovely. Don't rush it now. Now get your spindle and just angle this up slightly and just give it a couple of taps to knock that into there. Lean him over. Tip him over. Give it a little bit harder tap to knock the ember right out of there. Give him a couple of fans. Let him build up a little bit. That's the way. Yeah, let him build up. You've got a good pile of coal there, so the bigger we can get that coal before you introduce it to the bird nest, the better. Gives you a chance to have a breather too. Awesome work so far. Lovely. Now bring your bird nest over and introduce it to that one. Lift this one back. No, that's just in case charcoal a little bit. Start putting some air into it. Just put some air into it. Just set the guys up on a bit of a navigation exercise using the What 3 Words app. It's working really well. They're notifying me when they get to the checkpoints, move on to the next one. And we're throwing a bit of a scenario in there that they're not all aware of, that one of them has just come down with a snake bite. He's going to play it pretty real. They do have a snake bite kit with them. They're under a little bit of stress at the moment, so I'm going to wander over and just bring that part of the exercise to a close to take away the panic, but also to see how they responded to a potential snakebite incident.
I did see very quickly I'm not good enough at identifying snakes to know for sure.
So cool. How are you feeling? You feeling giddy or anything, or you just?
Yeah, I feel a bit giddy. I feel like I might vomit.
How quick did the bandage get on?
Fairly quick.
Within 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, and how tight's that bandage?
My foot's got pins and needles and it's throbbing a little bit.
Okay, does it feel like it's potentially too tight? Okay, so I know, like as far as like a sprained ankle, what you might put on for a sprained ankle, a nice firm bandage, does it feel like that, or does it feel tighter? That tingling you're feeling, does it feel like it's too tight?
I think it might be okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, hang in there, mate. Just for your guys' purposes, this is an exercise. Yep. Yes. Yeah. And we'll do a bit of a debrief and talk a little bit about another way that the bandage could go on. But well done getting onto it quick and getting something over the bite site. With a bit of reception, you could have a rescue helicopter land with those directions. Yeah, pretty well right on the button. They'd find a little spot out there and put the chopper down. Bloody snakes, eh? Can't get a refund.
Yep, thanks for here.
Get that material, you're lighting up in another. Yeah, obviously they're feeling the pressure of the time restraints. We're about 6 minutes out from when they're meant to light the fire triangle. They're still constructing the fire triangle, missing out on dry material. They've still got water together, light a fire, boil the water. So it's an hour-and-a-half project to navigate to 3 points, get to this location, set up a fire, set up a shelter, fire triangle, puts them under the pump. But more the experience of it, knowing the sequence of what they need to do and getting those priorities right, and then throwing in a scenario of a snake bite amongst it, puts them under the pump. Just good, clear communication. Try not to be out in the heat any more than you need to be. Teamwork, making sure that everybody is active in building that teamwork to get the projects done in the right order. They've been instructed that an aircraft will be coming in from the north. And one of the items they had to pick up from a nav point was a survival blanket, one of Bob Cooper's survival blankets. So they got that facing in a northeasterly direction. So an aircraft flying over. They were certainly, if a signal was raised and they were looking for them, they're going to see it. Pretty clear, pretty bold.
Alright, if you guys can sit on either side of me, keep the wind out.
And steady, hold it there, stop what you're doing.
Holding.
Okay, come back out, grab a drink of water, and we'll pull everybody in together and we'll have a little bit of a chat.
How you feeling, mate? You pulled up alright?
Yeah, I'm all better. Thank you very much, everybody, for your part.
So there is no real pass and fail to this, but towards the end I'll probably assume that you felt the pressure, probably more so Anthony, because you were you're the one that was trying to direct the speed and trying to get things happening with more of a sense of urgency probably than other people. You may have felt, John, that you were sitting in a position down there where it's like, I wish I could be doing more, but I'm sitting with the snake bite scenario. You're probably feeling, can we just call this bit and I go and help so they can achieve theirs? Yeah, am I sort of, yeah. How'd you guys feel?
Under pressure.
You did feel the pressure?
Yeah.
Part of the reason for the activity is to allow you to feel the pressure. And even though at one stage, like, you sounded a little bit nervous on the phone about the snake bite, not quite knowing if it was real.
Yeah.
Because it's certainly Joel was asked to act it out as being real, so I could feel an element of panic on the radio.
Good acting.
Yeah. Anthony was already going for his phone to call 000, so good call on that one. I've done this before and somebody got the call out. The feeling of that feeling real and not knowing if that was real and Joel playing the part, understand that would be similar to a real situation. If he played his role properly and you felt nervous and panicked and you had to make the call to me and you were heading to your phone thinking, whether it got battery power, I don't know how much battery power you had left in your phone, and you would have been running around trying to get reception, and then you're thinking, holy shit, I will have to use the what 3 words to get.
Because we're expecting, it's not just shelter from the elements, but that would be even if the fires weren't up, because that's going to be a higher time and energy to get done. That at least gives us some visibility with the yellow help.
Yeah, it's a passive signal. Yeah.
Yep.
You've still got, what'd you get in the box? 2 matches. Who would only give you 2 matches? That's
Well, 2's better than 1.
It is. One's better than none.
And sometimes 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
That's what they say. Yeah. So we'll go over and have some lunch shortly, but let's light this one up.
Okay.
And let's do it reasonably quick if we can, because I want to get you a bit of food in your guts before we head off.
Need it. So on the way down from the hill, we found this little vine and just took a second to grab it. It ended up being the extra bit of cordage we needed to finish the shelter.
Yeah, which is vine?
Yeah, it's right here on the corner. Not sure.
A weed species? Yeah, probably sriracha. Yeah, common weed. Yeah.
But it's better than having to hack up a paracord.
Oh, it's dropped in it. Nah, I don't think that'll survive the wind.
Okay.
Okay, so what's your intention now? You've got this lit.
Where are we carrying it? We've got to carry it, pick it up before it.
Remember the idea of the broom?
Yeah.
Let's go, get it over there. Up underneath, let the fire climb.
Is that in there?
No, not yet.
Okay, let's go fire triangle. Just make sure your fires are fully...
Probably a few of the knots that we learnt, just applying them in making the shelter, the help shelter.
Yeah, the self-defense was best as well. Probably because just the physicality of it, I enjoyed. I knew none of this, so that's good.
Well, it's been probably 5 or 6 years since I've been out in the bush in any meaningful way. I used to do a lot of bushcraft stuff. I came out here because I knew it was time to get the skills back, sharpen the knife a bit, get some fresh air. Favorite part? I'd say just feeling comfortable again. Like the first couple days were a little uneasy because I hadn't used the gear for a long time. I haven't been out in the elements. And now that we're leaving, I'm just sort of feeling comfortable. So that's probably the best thing. Individual skills are great to learn. Some things I hadn't known, some things I haven't done for many years. So it was a refresher, as well as new stuff. Some new knot tying, bit of navigation, teamwork, objective, like pursuing an objective. So all those things are good. So it's more than just camping. It's actually putting a combination of skills together in a limited time and then having a curveball thrown in. That's probably the best part was the end, that whole scenario of actually practically applying the stuff we just learned instead of it just being some head knowledge. When you've actually done it and you have stress under you, I think that makes an impact and it's more memorable.
Knife skills, using my knife.
Don't mean to catch while you're eating your mandarin.
Just thinking about it, enjoying it, but
the weekend's come to an end.
utilising, I suppose, the environment, making,
How you feeling?
constructing things.
Feel
was
good. Feel good.
Yeah,
Bit
enjoy it.
sore. A few little bruises, cuts, and good stuff that's happened, but
Just getting outside in the fresh air. Enjoying the fire.
it was great. It was a little bit difficult for some things, but I had a great time and I learned a lot, and it was very professional and very safe. I would recommend this to anybody that wanted to have a bushcraft adventure.
Wicked. Do you have a favourite part?
Yeah, well, I really wanted to work on the knots, and I really loved the scenario with the emergency. That was a lot of fun and very interesting.
What would you say to anyone considering getting back into the bush but was a bit nervous?
Give it a go. It doesn't matter, how healthy you are or how old you are. There's something here for you, and it's a great to experience and get in contact with nature.
Good group. You always never quite know what sort of characters you'll get on there. But if they come on with the right attitude, it's like a lot of things. If they get the right attitude, they'll take a lot away from it.